So the reading today is from our very own Ernest Holmes, and he says, "Principle is not bound by precedent. There is no law in the universe that seeks to perpetuate old limitations, but there is a law that responds to our greatest vision at the exact level of that vision. The mind should be kept in a buoyant, expectant, enthusiastic attitude. All weightiness and confusion must be eliminated, and we must think back to that which is boundless and free. Just as surely as we do this, we shall find that the prison walls of the lesser self begin to crumble. The horizons of experiences begin to push itself farther away, because more spiritual territory is taken in. Greater experiences are bound to follow."
Thank you very much, Cindy. That's an absolutely perfect song for today. Today, whose message is Principle and Precedent. The day whose message has a tagline of principle is not bound by precedent. You heard Ernest Holmes say that line in the reading this morning. It was this idea, principle is not bound by precedent, was first stated by a man named Thomas Troward. Now, Thomas Troward was a divisional judge in British-administered India. His avocation was that he studied comparative religion. He also wrote a number of books, including the Edinburgh Lectures, The Creative Process in the Individual, the Dorr Lectures on Mental Science, to name just a few. And he wrote these books between the years of 1904 to 1915. So if you think about the fact that we are now celebrating 100 years of science of mind, Thomas Troward preceded that. And in fact, his work influenced the New Thought movement. He was actually one of the past presidents of the New Thought Alliance. Ernest Holmes was a big fan of Thomas Troward. Now, when I was in practitioner training, they were always asking us to be able to speak about this thing or that thing without jargon. Jargon being those special words that a particular group of people, a particular profession, a particular field of study uses, but that people find it very hard to understand. So let me first break down this idea of principle is not bound by precedent so that we can all be kind of on the same page, okay? Principle. Basically, principle is God, the fundamental truth, all that there is, the first cause of life itself, the creative energy back of everything. A principle is something that always works the same way every time for everyone. Is not bound by. Well, this is a little bit more self-explanatory. Is not bound by means that there is nothing holding it back, nothing limiting it, nothing that can restrict it, nothing that can confine it. Precedent. Precedent means it means a previous action, situation, or decision that can be used as a reason or an example for a similar action or decision at a later time. So, for example, because I am a huge fan of courtroom dramas, the first idea that came up to me around this is when one lawyer argues that something is so because a case that preceded the current case ruled one way or another on a similar issue. Do you know what I'm talking about? So courtroom law is bound by precedent. But the law that I'm talking about today, the law with a capital L, is not bound by precedent. Spirit creates from its own essence. It has no past and no future. The divine is not bound by or limited to anything that it has already created in the past. It is unconditioned. It is always eternally creating anew all of the time. Now, because we were created in the image and likeness of God, we too have this ability within us to be unconditioned, to have unlimited possibility to create anew. In truth, we are not bound by the past, not our past, not our family's past, not our parents' past, not our friends' past, not the past of anyone. We have free will to choose a new path each and every moment of each and every day. However, that is not always the way that we live our lives. Precedent can be this sense of inertia that comes when something has been a particular way for a particularly long time. We just would typically say, it's just the way that it is. Or we might say, I have always been and will always be blank. You go ahead and fill in the blank. Blank is fine. We think nothing can change because it has always been that way, that there's some kind of universal rule that says that things have to always remain the same. But in truth, there is no universal rule that says that. It is only our own thoughts, individually and collectively, that can keep us stuck in the past. Ernest Holmes says, all mankind is more or less following the patterns of thought in which it is immersed. Whether we choose to call this the collective unconsciousness, the carnal mind, or the influence of race suggestion makes no difference. Most of us follow the patterns of thought as they have been laid down throughout the ages. We say things must happen today and tomorrow because they happened yesterday and the day before. Think about it. How many times have you heard yourself say or someone else say that this is something that was done in this way because it was the way that my mother and or my father did it? So, for example, my mother taught me to be passive-aggressive, and so I am too. I'm not speaking because that's the way it is. Or how about my father and his father before that all went into medicine, and so I have to become a doctor too. Or the one that seems to get us into trouble when we begin to have our own families. My family always celebrated the holidays in a particular way, and now I have to do the same with my own family. Too often we get caught up in our limited viewpoints. We get hypnotized by the past. We get hypnotized by the beliefs that others have held throughout time. And then we turn over our individual possibilities to the collective group, to the prevailing race consciousness, and we remain stuck. We believe that we cannot experience our good because we have not experienced our good in the past. The bottom line is that it doesn't have to be this way. We can just as easily say to ourselves, my mother taught me to be passive-aggressive, and I get to choose to be open and honest and authentic in all of my relationships. My father and his father before that all went into medicine. But I have within me a desire to be a chef, and so I am going to follow that path. My family has always celebrated the holidays in this way, but now I have the opportunity to create new ways of celebrating the holidays with my own families. It is a choice. It is a simple choice. We're not limited to what has gone on before. We are not bound by our past stories, our past beliefs, or our past experiences. We have only to look at the field of technology or medicine or travel or communication, to name just a few, to see that this is the truth. The laws of nature, the principles that govern life, know absolutely nothing about precedent. Each of these fields and many others are constantly evolving and constantly changing. Nothing in nature remains static, nor do we have to remain static. Ernest Holmes says, "But we cannot do this unless we believe that we can, for the belief that we cannot binds us back to the old precedent and compels us to accept only as much good as has been experienced in the past. If we can get it firmly fixed in our minds that principle is never bound by precedent, we shall no longer be hypnotized by the past." Doesn't that sound wonderful? Now, in order to prove this in our own lives, Ernest Holmes says that there are 5 steps that we are encouraged to use. These 5 steps can assist us to create new avenues in our mind and to live the truth that principle is not bound by precedent. The first is that we have to realize what we are dealing with. We have to begin with a firm conviction that we are dealing with a power that in no way can be bound. That God is infinite and limitless, that there is nothing too big or too small in God, that there is nothing which can stop it from creating something new out of nothing. The power is only limited through our own beliefs, and the truth is that our beliefs are finite, while the power is infinite. The second is that we have to realize that we have access to this power. Ernest Holmes says that we could never do this if we believed that this power was something outside of ourselves. The truth is that it is not something separate from us, that this power is within us, and we have availability to it at any given moment in time because it is immediate and personal to each of us. We each have a personal relationship with it. It is a power that is the allness of possibility within us, and it is ready to be called upon at any given time by us. Believing that we are finite makes us forget that we have access to this power. Believing that we are finite makes us forget that this power is within us, that it has always been within us, that it will always be within us. It is our life force. The next step is to identify with this power and presence. Not only do we have access to it, but we have to identify with it. Wayne Dyer writes in his book, There's a Spiritual Solution to Every Problem, there is an intelligent system that we are all a part of. There is a force, a power, a consciousness that created and supports this system. The force is omnipresent, and therefore it is in you. We are one with this power. We live and move and have our being in this power. So the invitation is to fully embody the truth that I and the Father are one. I and the Father are one, is to deeply embody it as Jesus did. I and the Father are one, to really sense this truth and to feel it deep down in our soul. As always, the way to do this is through our spiritual practices of centering, meditation, contemplation, affirmation, visualization, and prayer. These spiritual practices allow us to gradually, over time, expand, enlarge, and deepen our concepts of God, our concepts of the law, our concepts of life itself. Just as we align with this power and presence, we align with the wholeness, the peace, the joy, the creativity, the love, the abundance, and the perfection that is at our very core. As we align with it, our awareness of our oneness becomes very real to us. Very real to us. We know that we are operating from the very center, from the very heart of it. We are a point at its center, and that is where we can operate our lives from. As we align with it, we find it easier and easier to turn away from the negative thoughts and beliefs that limit or bind us, even though our senses may be trying to tell us that we should continue to follow the old established precedent. Even though. The fourth step is to consciously increase your expectation and deepen your realization of it by using it. After we access it and identify with it, we must consciously use it. Ernest Holmes says that love points the way, and that the law makes the way possible. So the truth is that we are the love. And the universe is just simply waiting for us to point in a direction. We have a choice in the direction that we will point. We can choose to point to a new way of thinking, to a new way of feeling, to a new way of believing, to a new way of being, or we can choose to point to and continue to stay stuck in the past. Either way, the law only and ever says yes. We spoke last week about the law of mental equivalence, that the law of mental equivalence, a little bit more jargon for y'all, but if you were here last week, you'd be out of it by now. So the law of mental equivalence asks us to take our thoughts and our feelings and our beliefs and to go beyond what we have always believed was possible for our lives, and then to stay in that consciousness. So this is really consciously increasing our expectations, expanding them beyond what we have always believed was possible, expanding them beyond what we have always experienced in the past. A new mental equivalent will point in a new direction. A new mental equivalent will allow us to stop living the same life over and over again. Unless, of course, we want to. That's okay, too. Increasing our expectations and using the power that is available to us will change our lives. We must create new avenues in our consciousness in order to have a new outlook, in order to have a fresh approach to life. We are not bound by anything except our thoughts. We are not bound by anything except our feelings. We are not bound by anything except our beliefs. And the truth is, we have dominion over all of them. Anything is possible. Once again, we are reminded here in this step of just how important our imagination is. A certain amount of imagination is needed to create a feeling of acceptance around this new idea that we wish to be, or this new life that we wish to be experiencing. A certain amount of imagination is needed to break down the old patterns that we have, break down these old patterns that we've held for so long that have created the context out of which we are living our lives. Our own wonderful human imagination is actually the creative power of God within us. Our imagination is the power that we can use to shift ourselves out of the circumstances that we might find ourselves within. We can experience our heart's desire through our imagination. Anything is possible and nothing is impossible. So in this moment, I just invite you to close your eyes. Take a deep breath and allow yourself to connect with your imagination. First, determine what new experience you wish to experience. What is that? Then bring to your mind's eye the end result of what it is that you desire. So, for example, if you are seeking a promotion at work, the end result might be that people would congratulate you on your promotion. You might move into a larger office. You would enjoy an increase in pay. Allow your imagination to take you to the end of that desire. The end result, whatever it is, there might be more than one. Now take any one of those end results that came up in your imagination and with your eyes closed actually hear and feel that end result happening. In our example, you would hear your friend congratulate you on your promotion. You would feel their hand in theirs as they tell you how happy they are for you. The invitation is to simply allow yourself to really experience the fullness of this end result with all of your senses. By actually feeling that, you are experiencing the end result. Your imagination will go to work to bring about that state in your outer world. You don't need to be concerned about how this will be accomplished. Your imagination will use whatever natural means are necessary to bring it about. After you have experienced this result, this end result in your imagination, open your eyes and simply go about your normal day. Make your inner conversations and your outer actions conform to this imagined experience. What you are doing is actually planting a seed. A seed that through this power becomes the reality of your life. What you reap, so shall you sow. Something new, something different. Something wildly imagined and brought to life through the power of imagination, through the power of this power. The final step is to continue until it becomes real to us. So once again, we are reminded here in this step of the importance of being singularly focused. The invitation is to not turn back to lack and limitation. The invitation is to not turn back to the past. The invitation is to keep our attention stayed on the truth of our being. To keep our attention stayed on the truth of the power that is within us. To keep our attention stayed on the allness of possibilities. The invitation today then is to, number one, realize what we are dealing with. Number two, realize that we have access to this power. Number three, align ourselves or identify ourselves with this power and presence. Number four, consciously increase your expectation and deepen your realization of it by using it. And number five, continue until it becomes real to you. Please repeat after me. There are new thoughts and new ideas coming to me.
There are new thoughts and new ideas
I open my whole consciousness to the influx of that which is larger and better than anything I have ever experienced before. Principle is not bound by precedent. And so it is. And so it is. Please turn within. Surrounded by this infinite presence, indwelled by this benevolent power. I am filled with joy. I am filled with awe. I am filled with the awareness of its presence. I know that I know that I know that I can never be separate from it, that it is who and what I am at my very core. And just as I know that this is my truth, I know that it is so for each and every person here this morning. Each and every person within the sound of my voice. And it is from that place of unity, this deep and abiding connection by that golden thread of God's stuff that weaves itself throughout all of life, that I speak this word of prayer for each of us this morning, individually and collectively, as the Triangle Center for Spiritual Living. Knowing beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is a way in which we can live our lives that powerfully makes use of this power that is available to us. A way of stepping into consciously using it in every arena of our life. A way that allows us to turn away from any idea that we might have that things have to remain the same simply because they have done so for so long now. I know that this is not the truth. I know that principle is not bound by precedent. And because it is not bound by precedent, I know that I am not bound by precedent. And because I know that I am not bound by precedent, I know that no one here is. We all have choice. We all have free will. Each and every moment of each and every day, we can choose anew. We can create a new path, a new way of living. I claim ease and grace for us around diving deeply into our spiritual practices and allowing those practices to connect us deeply with the divinity that is within us and surrounding us. Knowing that as we do so, it becomes so real to us that we could never think of denying it, never think of questioning it, never think of being separated from it. And as we do that, our lives are changed. And I'm so grateful to know this truth and to speak these words. So grateful for the power of prayer, knowing that these words are loosed into that law that works with mechanical regularity to clothe them in form, even as they are spoken. And so I speak them and I release them with love and gratitude. And I invite each of us to anchor this prayer for ourselves and for each other simply by saying, and so it is. Amen. Amen.